like to call the Board of Education study session for October the 12th to order. Secretary Van Gimmert, would you like to take attendance?
Well, there are 4 board members present. Yourself. Trustee Full.
Count them up, John. Let's make sure you get it right.
Me. Trustee Noble.
Okay.
I was trying to decide if I should go with who's not here.
Who's here, who's not here kind of thing. All right, can we please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Moving on to item number 2, public comments. Is there any public comment today?
We do not.
All right, seeing no public comment, we'll move on to item number 3, A, Superintendent Report.
Yes, thank you very much, President Southward. Just a handful of items that we want to update the community on today. First of all, yesterday was a special day for us. We had the Pine Lake Park dedication, and this is a celebration really of a partnership, a very unique partnership between us and the city of West Bloomfield, a 20-year lease agreement that we agreed with one of our vacant pieces of property in West Bloomfield, 21 acres. And the agreement is that we'll maintain ownership, but the city now will utilize it in their Parks and Rec program, and their Parks and Rec department will actually maintain the site. So it was a great day yesterday. Trustee Fala did a phenomenal job giving some comments, and we had a very nice turnout to recognize the partnership with our friends at West Bloomfield. Second, just would announce that upcoming on Saturdays, we have the middle school community open houses. As you know, we've had the ribbon cutting ceremonies, but the community open houses are coming up. They're from 12 to 2 on October 14th for South, and then North Middle School is November 4th, also from 12 to 2. And so we're looking forward to inviting the community in to see these remarkable facilities and get a first-hand look at what their bond issue dollars have done. It's, as we all know, just a spectacular site for students. Next, just want to give a shout out to the Bloomfield Hills Foundation. The school district's foundation just recently gave out 45 awards in the amount of about $11,000. They called them lightning grants, and they actually went out into our schools to these 48 sites, or 48 different individuals, and provided these awards on October 6th. So just want to take a moment to recognize the foundation and the work that they do for the school district. An update on an important safety meeting that we had, and a follow-up on the discussion as it relates to the walkers and bike riders at North Hills Middle School. There's been a variety of issues that we've been trying to work on since the school reopened back up as a middle school. And so we had a meeting on October 3rd with Bloomfield Hills, the city, township officials, the Oakland County Road Commission. We have both of our police chiefs from both Bloomfield Hills and from the township there with us, along with several of our staff and our board president. And it was, I think, a very productive conversation. What we came up with were potential short-term ideas to provide some support and additional safety for those students coming to school. And so one thing that we had been asked to do is to look at crosswalks at Hickory Grove and Lasser. And so the Oakland County Road Commission supported us and said that they would work to try to get that done within the next couple of months. And so that would be a short-term item. Another short-term item that we will have conversation with the city of Bloomfield Hills would be potential flashing lights on Lasser, both north of the school and south of the school, so the traffic as they're coming into that street and getting closer to the middle school would actually see that it is both a school zone, number one, and number two, that is 25 mile per hour speed limit. And so those are the short-term items that we're looking at. More long-term is the structural changes potentially at Hickory Grove that would change the light system there and potentially look at how that intersection flows with traffic. And so there was a commitment to have that conversation continue, and we really appreciated that. But as you can imagine, doing a change to an intersection takes quite some time to get not only the approvals from all of the entities, but then actually getting the bids and doing the work. They said the infrastructure at that corner is pretty old and would need to be replaced. Rather expensive project, but they did not say that they would not take a look at that. And so that is on the list to have further conversation with both the city and the township. And so just to follow up on all of those items, we sent a letter to the Oakland County Road Commission, to the city of Bloomfield Hills, and to Bloomfield Township, just to remind them of what we talked to and agreed to as far as next steps. And so now we've got that to them, and we'll be following up with them to see that that continues to move forward. So again, we thought it was a productive meeting. There are some relatively simple potential items and some that are a little bit more complex, but certainly all the parties were willing to sit down and consider making safety improvements around that school. Want to also give kudos to Jake and his team. As part of the work done at our schools, we actually, and you only do this if you're diligent and follow up on it, but we were able to get rebates from Edison. Detroit Edison gives a variety of rebates for certain improvements that you put in relating to utilities. And we're up to now $58,000 of reimbursement just because we've been on top of working that system and getting those dollars. So, Jake, thank you very much. And last, as a reminder that we'll continue to hit at every single board meeting, and that is November 7th. We have a sinking fund millage on the ballot. And just as a reminder, a sinking fund is to do renovations in our schools, much different than the bond issue that we passed in 2020 when we did a complete renovation of our Southward schools to be able to complete the reorganization of our K-8 schools. This is for ongoing repairs of all of our schools, sites, and the board did a significant study last year and found that there is still quite a bit of need on an ongoing basis, and certainly if there are any emergencies that come up, we've got these dollars set aside, and we're not wrestling with our general operating budget as it relates to doing major fixes to our facilities. And so that particular millage has been in place since 2005. It's been renewed on multiple occasions now, and we're coming to the community on November 7th for 3 years, 0.7 mils, again, renewal of a tax that has been in place since 2005. And so just want to remind the community that that's on the ballot. And if you need any additional information, just go to our website, the school district website, and we've got a variety of different pieces of information, including a Q&A, etc., and a video of me, if you want to watch that, to provide additional information about our sinking funds. So with that, President Southward, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Leopold. We do appreciate all of the time that you've taken to go into our community to provide presentations and updates on our sinking fund. And saving our rebate over there.
Couple bucks. We're going to let them come back to work tomorrow.
Yeah. Major.
Maybe Monday.
Maybe Monday. All right, moving right along to item number 3B, our superintendent search update. We were definitely excited when Dr. Leopold is going to be staying with us, and that he will be with us until the end of the year, and continuing with us even beyond that and serving the role of mentorship when Keith McDonald steps in as our interim superintendent in January. We will continue our search process. That will be myself, Siva Kumar, and Megan Hale, and we will continue to keep our community updated as we move forward with our next superintendent. All right. Moving right along to our financial audit discussion, item number 3C.
And if I could just provide some
Yes.
opening comments,
Dr. Leopold,
as you know I like to
good.
do, just some big picture comments before we turn it over to our audit team. We really need to provide a special thanks to some people that stepped in for the school district over the summer to help us close up the books and get the fiscal year in order and completed while we've been transitioning in our business office. Again, we have not had both an assistant superintendent or director of finance for a period of time. And so we were able to get Maria Gistinger to come in and pitch in on a part-time basis. Lori Hartnell came in from Oakland County and did a remarkable job. The amount of work that she did was amazing. Becky Geske, who actually left us to go to University of Michigan, but came back and helped us out on the side to get the audit ready, and then just all the rest of our staff did a remarkable job to make sure that we were in the position to where we are today, which is we have an audit report to share with the Board of Education. We again are going to be recognized for the completing the CAFR report, and the bottom line, just a couple of comments as I've looked at the financial statements for the school system. First of all, the good news is basically where we ended up the year. That's one of the big things that the auditors do. We basically ended up the year where we thought we were going to end the year. So the projections that were provided to you with the latest budget revision in at the end of last school year is pretty much by and large where we ended up, which meant we ended up with revenues slightly greater than expenses in our general fund. And so that's a positive. It built up our fund balance a little bit. But as I've analyzed the school district's expenditures, even over the last 5 or 6 years, there's a pretty good trend there for the school district. You've either been slightly above revenues, slightly above expenditures, or maybe slightly below. But what you've been able to do is maintain and slightly build up that fund balance and not get either of those out of whack, which is where the potential problems sometimes come into place. And so if those expenditures grow at any point in time greater than your revenues, of course, the great thing is because you've been prudent, we have a fund balance that can smooth that time out. But where we sit today, we've got that fund balance to do that, and you put the school system in a position where basically we're not looking at having to make any kind of major adjustment like that, and we're prepared to do that if we ever had to down the road. So keeping those revenues and expenditures very close to each other is a goal for, I think, every school system, and that's exactly what you've been doing. That's been the trend of the organization, and certainly I would assume would be the trend that you would want to have going into the future. A couple of things that I would highlight that they'll talk about today in more detail, and that is our ESSERS funds are pretty much coming to an end, and we'll be utilizing those over the next year or two to finish that fund up. But we just have to remember that those resources, when they're gone, whatever we did with those resources can't be continued. And so we have to monitor that very closely. Our healthcare costs are just something for us to monitor because we actually are self-insured for health insurance. And so we actually don't know until after the year how many claims are filed. It's a little different than someone who's getting a bill from Blue Cross Blue Shield and you're just writing the bill every month. You have a pretty good idea until they adjust the rates what your annual costs are. That's not the case here. And so keeping a close eye on that proprietary fund for the internal service of the health and welfare fund would be something that I think we would want to monitor pretty closely in the upcoming months and years. Of course, enrollment we're going to be watching very closely. We had a bit of a dip last year, and so we're going to want to see how that trend goes as we're getting ready to finalize our Fourth Friday account coming up very shortly. And really, we're at the point in time, the audit's done, we're in a great shape, but now it's about, okay, what are we doing to plan for the future? And so I know our friends from Plante Moran are going to provide us a variety of suggestions of things we ought to be thinking about when we're thinking about our financial health moving forward. And we ought to make sure that now those are the things on our radar, now that we know that we're basically where we thought we would be, that we keep those things on our radar so we continue to do what you guys have done, which is keeping a solid budget and programs in place for kids. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our remarkable auditors to provide some more details.
You just went through my whole agenda here.
That's right. These guys are getting used to me beating them to the punch. But
Thank you.
yes, you're going to provide much more and much more understandable detail though.
Yes, thank you very much. And to your point, I just also want to acknowledge Deanna, Carmela, coming into the middle of an audit, when there has been others that have been helping out and trying to jump in to what other folks have worked on, picked up, put down. It's going through an audit is challenging anyway, but they have been troopers in the process, and we really appreciate all your help and look forward to working with you both in the future. So just want to acknowledge you both, and we know we're throwing a lot of stuff at you in recent weeks, so really appreciate that. You should have received, in short order, we know 4 items. The basic financial statement, which is just the financial statement portion. There are a couple open items we're continuing to wrap up on the statistical section of the financial statement, and some graphs in the intro section. Those pieces are prepared by the district, and we will have those few items in the next couple days, and so the final report will include those items, but the financial portion is there in PDF format that was sent to you. In addition to that, there was the federal programs report, which details the grant dollars the district received and spent during the year. The end of audit communication to the Board of Education. There's different parts to that letter, and we'll talk about that, and then the graph presentation, which is what we will be planning on covering at the regular board meeting at the end of the month. But we were going to start off on the graph presentation at a high level, giving some highlights for the year. I feel bad. I have paper here. I know you all have your technology in front of you. But on the second page of the graph presentation, some key highlights. It's good news. We do intend to report an unmodified opinion on the basic financial statements. This is the highest form of assurance we can provide that the financial statements are fairly stated, free of material misstatement, can be relied upon by the users of the financial statements. We also ensure that they're in accordance with GAAP, which is generally accepted accounting principles, and we're required to audit in accordance with government auditing standards as well. So that's good news. On your federal programs, there were 2 programs that were tested, 2 major programs this year, the Child Nutrition Cluster and the IDEA program, not ESSER. So ESSER would have been a significant spend in the fiscal year 22 school year. There wasn't as much spent as those dollars are winding down in fiscal year 23. Compliance for the bond and sinking fund. We ensure that those dollars are spent on allowable costs. Those are prescribed in the ballot language for the district, but also in the bond and sinking fund guidelines, and we're looking at bid testing and those types of requirements as well, and we had no issues in that testing. One item we wanted to highlight, and we're highlighting this, of course, for all districts, is this additional one-time flow-through funding of retirement funds. As you may know, the state was in a better financial condition over the past couple years, and the decision was made to infuse $1 billion into the MIPSR's plan. The method of doing that is allocating those dollars to the district as revenue, and then you're required to, spend that money, put it right back into the MIPSR system. So what that has done, essentially, has grossed up everyone's financial statements this year, all districts, giving the impression there's actually more revenue and more expenditures than there truly is in any given year. I think this is going to continue to be seen as an asterisk year when comparing year over year when you look at historical analysis, because it's just significant. So it shows that you have $6 million of more revenue than you have. You can't use those dollars or on anything else. Just wanted to note as well that district did was awarded the 2022 Certificate of Excellence in Financial Reporting from the Association of School Business Officials International. So the report, the comprehensive report that the district puts together is submitted each year, and you were awarded this certificate for 2022. And we'll be applying again next year. Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right, on the next
Well
slide. The next slide is a snapshot of the pandemic funding that the district received. And it details out each of those different grants, as well as when they were required to be spent, what your timeline is on each of the grants, and where things stand currently. So the total awarded was around $11.9 million. The total expended to date, about $10.7 million. So there's about 1.2 roughly as of the end of the school year that's planned to be spent, and it needs to be spent before September 2024. Comparably, when we look at other districts, you hear a lot about the fiscal cliff. There's a lot of talk about that. In some districts, the pandemic funding was truly significant, like very significant. In your case, it was not as significant, in my opinion. So when you hear a lot of discussion around the fiscal cliff, the district has thoughtfully spent these dollars and are winding that spending down to smooth that out. So it is not as impactful. It is impactful. It's great funding sources and great use of those dollars during a time the district needed it, but it is something that is manageable for the district in the budget process. Okay. Casey, Casey's just going to touch on at a high level the actual general fund revenue and expenditures.
Yeah, we'll go in more depth on this in the formal meeting on the 26th, but just for this meeting, we'll keep it super high level on where the general fund came out. So the focus is going to be on the general fund. That's the main operating fund. And this first slide here is taking a look at revenue and other sources. So total revenue came in at $114 million, and that's compared to around $101 for fiscal year 2022. As Donna mentioned, $6 million of that is that additional one-time MSRS funding that you have no control over. It comes in, it goes back out. So there's to account for that. We just kind of go clockwise around the pie chart for individual items. So local source revenue, making up 34%. That's consistent with last year. Primarily it's property taxes, which are around $33 million of that total balance that you see. The next bucket is your state revenue, 52.7%. That's up a little bit from last year, but again, that's where the $6 million is included in that state source revenue, because that's coming through on your monthly state aid payments. The state revenue also includes your per pupil foundation allowance, so that's also in that state bucket, and there was a pretty large increase compared to last year in that per pupil amount, so that increase is in there as well. Interdistrict transfers and other, so that remained consistent as well. That is largely made up of your Act 18 and your Medicaid distributions that you get from local schools. That's over 90% of that balance. And then the last piece is federal revenue. So this actually increased, and for the general fund, that's including your special education and your ESSER funding. That's what's sitting in that bucket. And I did want to point out a timing difference there, because there was $3.9 million of ESSER money that was spent in fiscal year 22, but due to period of availability, we weren't allowed to recognize that revenue until fiscal year 23. So there was that mismatch of expenditures versus revenue, but as Randy mentioned, and we'll see it when we look at fund balance, it sort of net out between the 2 years. Flipping to expenditures, so we actually have 2 slides on expenditures just showing different breakout of how to analyze them. So this first slide is looking at them classified by their function code, or you can look at it as departmental expenditures, or how they're getting spent, like where they're getting spent. Majority of expenditures, as expected, are spent on instruction and instructional support, and so that's 32.5% of, or sorry, 72.5%. It's a much better number of your total expenditures. That's down 0.5% from last year, but impacted by the one-time funding. And although the percent is down, the actual dollar-wise, that's up $6.2 million compared to last year. And if you're looking at the remaining departmental expenditures, there really wasn't any significant swings in any of those balances. We flip quickly to the next slide. So these are looking at those same expenditures, which I don't recall if I said the total on the last one, but total expenditures came in at around 112.7 million, and that's compared to 103.6 last year. Again, that's the other side of the gross up on the expenditure side, including that 6 million of one-time funding of the retirement. And where you'll see that on this graph is it's sitting in the employee benefits bucket, and that's where it's reported. But overall on this slide, if you're looking at it, as you would expect, a majority of your expenses are spent on salaries and benefits. And that's 83.7 is where that came in, which is almost the same percentage as last year, which was 83.3, so up slightly. And then if we switch, the last slide is a quick analysis on the general fund balance. So we're looking at the change at the top. Current year changes, we added around $1.5 million of fund balance this year. As Randy mentioned, the board had adopted a final budget which planned for an increase of $1.5 million, so that came in right where it was supposed to be expected to be. To go into more detail on that timing difference, just to think back on the $3.9 million, without that revenue being recognized this year, there actually would have been a usage of fund balance of around $2.4 million, which is pretty equal to what the usage of fund balance was last year, where the expenditures were showing without the revenue. So last year's decrease in fund balance was $2.3 million. So if you're looking at it between the 2 years, the net difference is really just a decrease of less than $1 million between fiscal year 21 to now on fiscal year 23. And just a quick comment on the components of fund balance. So that assigned piece is what you're expecting based on your original 2024 adopted budget to use in fund balance in the upcoming year. So super light amount of planned usage of fund balance in 2024.
The break-even year. You know, the timing difference with the ESSER dollars and the timing of collection is something we've seen a lot. The timing of when expenditures were submitted for reimbursement, because all those programs are reimbursement based, and how quickly the state could turn that around and get districts paid. There's a unique accounting rule for fund accounting entities, which there's a 60-day rule. If districts do not receive receivables within 60 days, you're not allowed to recognize that as revenue, and that was the case here. The district knew that, planned for it, and budgeted for it accordingly.
I lied. I had one extra slide. So this is just a quick glimpse of the retirement funding and the mixers expense and looking at historical data. This is really here to just illustrate the expense that has increased over time and what a significant expense it is to the district. So in the funding helps that the state's providing, and you'll see the outlier in the 2023 bar. It's super high because that's including the $6 million that's one-time funding that you wouldn't have received in the past. And this is showing there's still an increasing trend in the retirement rate, and that's expected to continue in the next few years as well.
Yeah, so if you look at projections out to 2025-26, it is actually at 50%. So I reflected the other day. I remember when I first began auditing how upset everyone was when it was at 11%. I'm dating myself, but it's at a point where, when planning, for every dollar the district spends on salaries, it's $1.50. It's getting to that point. I mean, the state continues to help with that, but the amount of funding required to the pension plan will continue to be a burden on public schools.
So the net rate is net of what the state is giving us in, right?
Correct.
So even though the rate is 45%, the state's knocked that down to 28% of our real, that's what we have to budget for.
Correct.
I mean, the net cost we have to budget
Yes.
for.
Which, when you think of, the amount of payroll, this is what you do. You're essentially a service organization. You have people, and that's most of your expenditures. So that is a very impactful rate year over year.
So the pay-in to the MIPSers, expires at some point, correct? Like the,
There was actually, and I've lost track of it, but during the Snyder years, they had a plan to finally get the unfunded portion paid off.
right.
And they were putting additional money in to do that, and it was going to be paid off in, it couldn't have been 2030.
45.
Was it 45?
Yeah.
That was 36 for some reason.
Yeah,
But-
2036, that's
But
There you go.
Does this 6 million that they're pumping in this year, does that offset that date at all?
You know, and we can point to that. I believe the entire unfunded liability is almost 30 billion. So yes, an additional $1 billion is meaningful, but the amount over time, and as you know, I mean, that is a point in time valuation that they do each year in order to determine what that unfunded liability is. There was a big swing between last year at this time. There's like they look back a couple years, and when the valuation was done, because the market was up at that time, and then it's now gone back down. So it's really a measurement as a point in time. There's always going to be a continued liability that continues to be funded, but you're exactly right. The plan was to fill that hole that is in the plan with these additional contributions. So they're directing dollars into the pension system rather than to districts for operating costs. So it's a drag on the amount of resources that is being allocated to districts for regular operations.
To your point though, John, you want to be a school board member in 2037.
Yeah.
It's going
A
to be,
big
it's going to be
celebration.
fun. I mean, think about that, getting a 30% bump in your budget. Can you imagine? Yeah.
I'm sure they'll find something to do with that.
Yeah. And John, you will still be on the board then. I don't think I've got you committed that long.
I did too.
Maybe I'll be back.
A 20-year term. So closing comments, just to recap, the district had positive audit results. The books were essentially, 85% closed upon Karen Holderbrand leaving the district, and it was very important for her to leave in a good way and make sure that things were buttoned up. And it was also very important, as I mentioned, another bullet point here, that things were managed good in that transition as it relates to the internal control processes and procedures in the district. It was truly a priority, and I know we had many calls with board members as well to ensure that the approvals, the bank authorization, that everything was very thoughtfully planned and timed and transitioned over. So we get that. We appreciate that as auditors, certainly. Internal control processes and procedures are essential. And we did not note in the audit that there were any significant deficiencies or material weaknesses as a result of the audit. So that's good news. And with regards to the federal programs, again, no findings or questions asked to report. So clean audit opinion. We do have a note, and I'll comment it on when we get to the letter, with regards to one journal entry that we came across that needed to be posted. It did not raise to the level of where we have to report it as a significant deficiency, but we do highlight that in the end of audit letter to the board. With the key changes in leadership roles, I would caution the district, the business office, oftentimes when there is turnover, and the turnover happened predominantly after the year end, this is when we, as auditors, would probably most often encounter deficiencies. When someone is having to pick up and put down someone else's work, everything's new, you've lost a great deal of history in your business office as well. You had long-term employees that had certain systems and processes in place, which is nice to have a fresh set of eyes on things. But just to be cautious as to making sure that the good systems and processes that are in place continue on. As well as just encouraging the district to continue the thoughtful planning behind the wind down of the pandemic-related funds. There has been, other grant dollars or categoricals that have come into play to offset some of that. And labor costs continue to rise. Inflationary operating costs continue to rise. Some of those federal dollars over time we see kind of can mask some of those increases and has helped smooth that. You do not have as significant as a fiscal cliff, again, as some other districts may have, but being very cautious about, what expenditures are going to be without that extra support is very, I know the district is very thoughtful in planning that out. All right. Just wanted to touch on a couple things in the end of audit communication to the Board of Education. This would be the document that is highlighted as saying the report to the Board of Education.
Management letter. It's
Yes, it's called the management letter.
Okay, totally.
And there's 3 sections to the letter. The first section is the results of the audit. This is what I always say is one of the most important things for board members, because if there were any issues or difficulties that were encountered during the audit, they would be reported here. There was not. But it also does specify, what our responsibilities as the district's auditors are, what management's responsibilities are as well. On page 3 of that correspondence, in the section where it says corrected, uncorrected misstatements, that was where it highlights just the one journal entry that was posted. It was related to retainage in your sinking fund, which is a posting that happens once a year. The district had the bond fund retainage posted properly. Sinking fund didn't normally have a retainage posting, and so we are just required to report that to you. The second part of this correspondence, there's 2 items just wanted to bring to your attention. There is new GASB implementation guide that has rolled out that gives additional clarification on certain GASBs that might have a little. GASBs are the accounting standards that districts have to follow. Some of those have some gray areas as to how what the requirements are. One of those areas that has been shored up with this update is related to fixed asset capitalization. The district right now has a capitalization policy of individual assets are capitalized or expensed if they're under $10,000. Above $10,000, the district capitalizes those. This standard or this guide clarifies that if items are purchased in bulk, so say you buy, instead of 1 table that you can expense, you buy 20 tables and it exceeds your 10,000, you can't expense each one individually. So it's just very much a clarifying factor that the business office just needs to be aware of, and then maybe revisiting the district's policy to ensure that that's shored up. The food service fund, have this comment on every district. It is related to the rule that districts can't retain more than 3 months expenditures in the food service fund. With the additional pandemic support over the years, districts have built that up where most districts have exceeded that and have a plan to spend that down. So just wanted to bring that to your attention. Right now, the district has about twice as much fund balance in the food service fund than what the rules provide for, which is not unusual.
And we have to spend those dollars on food service related items.
It can be capital expenditures for your food service program or offsetting other costs. Okay. The last section is very much for your reading pleasure. It is informational items with regards to the state aid funding, what the future looks like, things to be careful and cautious of, and looking forward and beyond. One thing I can point your attention to would be on page 13 in our discussion about the MIPSERS program. There is some information there regarding, it's $37.9 billion is the amount of the unfunded liability. in the MIPSRS fund. And the OPEB portion, or the medical or healthcare portion of that, there's an additional $2.1 billion in unfunded amounts there. Okay. At the bottom of page 13, the next section speaks to fund balance. Would like to highlight the fact that the district's fund balance as a percentage of expenditures, which is the measurement districts compare themselves by, is at 19.34% at the end of the year 23. In comparison, for fiscal year 22, the average of the state, excluding Detroit Public Schools, was around 20.3% the end of the year. So you're right in line to last year's average. And again, we expect that average to come down just because the expenditures for everyone has gone up, and so the calculation is actually impacted by those MIPSRS dollars that have come into the district. Okay. And then speaking of the sinking fund renewal, there is a new guide that has just been issued with regard to the bond and sinking fund, new legislation. One unique change with sinking funds, in addition to what can be purchased with those sinking funds, which includes transportation equipment and technology, and the most recent change, the district's now, from an accounting perspective, required to report any new, fingers crossed, any new sinking funds in a separate fund. So you can't commingle any new sinking fund issues with old sinking fund issues. So you may have two sinking funds if you have a positive result from the election. But just want to note that that is a new change.
Can you give an example? Do you mind giving an example, like, just to help me understand that?
Yeah. So if you think about it, even with how bond issues are issued, when you have a new tax levy and there's new rules for what those dollars can be spent on, which will be the case here, you cannot commingle that levy with the historic sinking fund
So if we
levy.
had any left over from this previous, we
Exactly.
couldn't suddenly buy buses, is what you're saying?
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. And that is all I wanted to cover in detail there. I did want to circle back to one item that Dr. Liepa had mentioned with regards to your self-insured medical. The district has an internal service fund. And that is when you have self-insurance and potential, a lot of estimates go along with self-insurance, a lot of estimates go along with, we call it an IBNR, like an incurred but not reported type liability that goes along with any self-insured plans. It is a great tool to have an internal service fund to manage those ups and downs and ebbs and flows that you might have in estimates versus reality. That internal service fund charges the other funds for medical, so you're able to manage that from a budget perspective in your other funds, and then pays when those claims come in. That internal service fund does the payment. What we did notice is, as of the end of the year, there is very little fund balance in your internal service fund. There is provisions in the fund for, you have cash, and there's estimates for claims, and actually severance is also included and reported in that fund. But typically there is some cushion, we would say, with some fund balance, and that was spent down to, I believe it was around $23,000 at the end of the year. So just wanted to have that on the district's radar as something that might want to consider, when looking at what those chargebacks are to the other funds, including the general fund. Okay. Is there any topics you would like me to cover in more detail?
I have a question on fund balance
Certainly.
percentages. So you mentioned a second ago that you said the average for the state was like 20
Yes.
approximately, and we were hovering just under at about 19 and a half. So whatever it is. For as far as averages go, or maybe typical school districts, have you seen a general decline in terms of average? Like what was the average 4 years ago, 5 years ago across the state?
Since the pandemic funds have come through, so I'd say 2021, 22, 23, when I look at districts as a whole, most often I see, because you could supplant those dollars, you could pay for regular expenditures in many cases, could offset costs. I've seen districts build their fund balance over that time. Previous to the pandemic, I want to say the state average was around 13 or 14%, and it has built up. Now, keep in mind that average it's a range in there as well, and every district is different in how they utilize those dollars or continue to use those dollars. But I have on you can see the average with the state went up, and it's reflected in the districts too. What I do see also is as districts are planning the next few years out, that increase in fund balance in order to smooth and normalize the cost structure is being utilized. So, or at least planned use of some fund balance over the next few years. Planning, of course, to have a break-even year, of course, is optimal. In some cases, I'm seeing utilizing fund balance in order to stabilize cost structures is necessary.
Okay. Thank you.
Great question.
Is there a penalty, I don't know if you know this, for not using the food service fund at a certain time?
It's going to be interesting because now that there's the additional legislation now that has passed in Michigan regarding full funding of all school lunch, we think that the source is it's going to increase the problem because you get economies of scales for your reimbursement and how much you have per lunch or per breakfast. So there's going to have to be some better guidance, I think, once that program gets rolling to guide districts on how to best utilize those dollars. It's not unique to Bloomfield Hills. It is across the board, an item that will need to be dealt with in the future, but it could be exacerbated by this new program.
And if we have more questions that we think about between now and next week, we can always formally ask these at the next board meeting. So if we don't have anything right now, we can totally still
Yes,
have
we
a
recognize.
conversation on 26.
Yes, we will be back. Well, thank
Anything
you for
else for Donna or Casey, Dr. Leopold, Bloomfield staff?
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Great to meet all of you.
Enjoy the rest of your evening. Moving right along, item number 3, D as in David.
Yes, again, going to provide some observation comments before I turn it over to Todd and his team to provide some context before we answer any questions that you might have. As you know, you received a significant amount of information relating to our annual state assessment. As you know, that's a summative assessment. Gives us sort of a check-in on a once-a-year basis in regards to how our students are doing compared against the state standards in regards to what they should be learning at the different grade levels. And I'm sure you guys have talked about this in the past. It doesn't provide a great deal of information for teachers specifically as it relates to their individual work on a daily basis because it's a summative assessment. By the time we get the data, the kids have already moved on to the next grade, and they don't even provide anymore what they used to provide, which was an item analysis of all of the items within the test. So you could even look at it from a district standpoint and say, oh, we're really struggling on this piece of the state assessment or this area because we could see that our kids didn't do as well. But it does provide some value, I think, to school districts as it relates to just looking sort of as a check-in in regards to both trend data and comparative data to see if there's something that's jumping out at us that would really say, okay, well, is there something going on with our educational program based on what we're seeing? And so just a couple of items that I would highlight before I turn it over to Todd. If you had your slides up, and this is the slide presentation that we provided related to the state testing requirements. If you move to slide 23, and what that actually provides is data related to trends since 2016-17, and it compares Bloomfield to the average 5 highest performing school systems in Oakland County. And so it gives us sort of a good range on comparing us to the best of the best here in Oakland County. And what caught my eye when I looked at this is that comparatively 2016 through 2023, we see sort of a slight upward trend there. And what you see in the other with the other 5 school systems is a slight downward trend to where they were slightly above us on average in 2016-17. We're actually slightly above them now in 2022 and 23. And just in talking to the staff about whether there's some changes, and indeed in about 2015, the board and the school district made some pretty significant changes in their math and reading instruction and materials utilized at our elementary schools. Again, this is the grades 3 through 7 ELA data. And so, it's hard to say specifically, is that the one thing that impacted this? It's always hard to tie any particular one action to a bigger overall assessment analysis. But it certainly shows a positive trend here, and that's one change that we know that occurred. And you see the same thing on slide 24 when we look at math. And so math, again, you see the trend for Bloomfield since 2016 is slightly upward, whereas you've seen the trend with those other 5 top performing school systems slightly downward, to where we were slightly below these school districts grades 3 through 7 in math, and now we're actually 6 points above them in 22-23. And so again, this was that period of time where it wasn't just ELA, but it was math, where we made some curriculum changes, and potentially they paid off. I would move down now to slide 48. I'll just move right to the high school and highlight what we see at the with the SAT scores, actually 49. If you look at the middle school test scores, and if you look at the ELA scores for the high school at the SAT, we're pretty much in line with those other 5 top performing school systems. We do note, though, if you look at the SAT for math, that we actually are behind as it relates to those same 5 school districts. And so this is a bit of a different trend. And so I just wanted to highlight that there are some things in place that we're hoping will address this, that the school district has been working on now, most significantly with the change in the reorganization of the school system, now having the 6-8 program, and from what I understand, completely changing the schedule for middle school students. And when you look at the amount of time now per day that students have to focus on math, in the 8th grade it's 88 minutes compared to what used to be 48 to 54 minutes, and in the 7th grade it's 75 minutes now compared to approximately 55 minutes. So because of the changes in the schedule, we've created more time on task for our middle school students, and so that's a pretty significant change to try to change this particular trajectory. Along with this, what we've seen is an increase in regards to students now taking algebra 1 in 8th grade. And so if you went back just a few years ago, that was about a 26% rate of students taking algebra 1 in 8th grade, and that's now the last 2 years up to 50%. And so those are a couple of significant, sort of district-wide changes, big picture changes that have been made that will hopefully start to address this. We do have to recognize that those changes will take a couple years before those kids are 11th graders and actually taking the SAT. But those were, just some things that I caught as I was looking at this with some fresh eyes for the first time. Pretty impressed what I saw grades 3 through 7, and really in the 8th grade also. But we certainly see that there's an area here in math that we would want to improve in, and there are some changes that are in place to begin to address that. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Todd and let him provide details.
All right, I met with Randy earlier today, and he asked me which slides I was going to highlight, and I had my top 50 of the 55 now, and he asked me to narrow that down a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and start us back up towards the top of the document, and then I'll just take us through some areas to highlight. So I'm going to go back to slide 8. If you scroll back up. And first, I'm just going to show you a basic overview of what those proficiency rates are at each grade between 3rd and 8th grade. Some of the areas that we're concerned about, we continue to be concerned about math in 5th grade. We believe that that's not quite reflective of where our students should be. Also for 6th grade ELA, and then we're very pleased with our 3rd and 4th grade proficiency rates there, as well as with the PSAT once we get to ELA in 8th grade. So 8th grade is the PSAT sitting in that, and then the other grades are MSTEM. Next, I'm going to take you to slide 10.
Yeah, I'll stop you real quick. If it seems like, or not, it doesn't seem like it, it is consistent that 5th grade is kind of a fall off year. Is there any work being done to identify kind of what's happening at that level? I would hypothesize that it had something to do with the transition to the middle schools, but the ELA scores don't seem to reflect the same drop off. So,
if you jump to slide 10, we believe there's a combination of things happening particularly for 5th grade math. And what this is looking at is are those same proficiency rates, and then what's helpful is for us to put that next to the county and state, because now we're looking for the variance in the test. So here you can see that MSTEP throughout the state is kids tend to do a little bit better with it in 3rd and 4th grade. 5th grade for math tends to be a drop off across the state, but what we're finding interesting, John, is even though that we are dropping off in 5th grade, we're also dropping off at a greater rate than our peer districts. So let's say on average with the top 5 districts that maybe they fall about 10% going from 4th grade to 5th grade, we would expect to have the same type of trend that our peer districts are having. But we're finding that sometimes we're like 3 to 5% more than that. As we review that 5th grade data and what it's suggesting, because also in the next year in 6th grade, we completely rebound back to where that cohort was in 4th grade. So let's say our students in 4th grade their proficiency rates are top in the county. And then in 5th grade, maybe that falls to like 3rd. What we're seeing is in 6th grade, it's very likely that they're right back at that top place again. And so what we're assuming is happening there is that really suggests that there's a curriculum alignment issue within our Envision math program. And Randy was referring to, we used to be able to do item analysis where we could actually tease out exactly what are we missing in our curriculum. Sometimes it's even the placement and the timing that perhaps that is being taught in 5th grade was being taught at the end of the year after the MSTEP has taken place. Doing some of a little bit digging, what we're finding is that it's likely around different types of graphing and tables, being able to extract data and perhaps write that into the story problem. What we're trying to do right now is grab some resources from other districts of what their math programming was, because the next best thing that we can do that we've narrowed in on what the content is, to then put the 2 5th grade resources next to each other and sort of assume, okay, what's stronger in this district's math program that isn't represented in the same timing as our 5th grade. So now that we've seen that in a couple years, it is strongly suggesting that we likely have a curriculum alignment issue. Even though we're going to go through this year and be studying a K-5 review and likely adopting a new program, we still want to know what that is, because we could still have time to supplement that this year if we can figure out particularly what that is within the curriculum, as well as when we choose a new curriculum, we want to make sure that that is either present or continue to supplement those materials as well.
That was going to be part of my question, what you just answered, but I also have another question. Fifth grade curriculum, fourth grade curriculum, is our fifth grade curriculum and our fourth grade learning, because most of the time in the beginning, when I could really look at what my child does, it really isn't a whole lot of new things that they're doing in that first few weeks of the semester, correct? It's more things you probably learned at the end of fourth grade.
For sure, yeah.
And a lot of more of the, okay, now let's take that application after we've just reviewed. So is our fourth grade curriculum aligning our students to a point where when we get ready to take that step, that they've had enough information, that the knowledge is more of a building block as opposed to the first time they've been introduced to the concepts that we are falling behind in on the current test? I'm just trying to see if is it a fourth grade, or is it that our fifth grade?
We're narrowing in on fifth grade in terms of analyzing the curriculum, only because the fourth grade, it could be in fourth grade, but our students are testing much more competitively in fourth grade, so that's suggesting that we might not have an alignment issue in there, that it is likely occurring in fifth grade, but you're right, it could extend back to
Are other
fourth
districts teaching those particular concepts not in the beginning of the year, but are those students learning those concepts at the end of their fourth grade year? So come fifth grade, they've already been exposed to those concepts, and now we are behind in that particular area because that whatever we're missing, because if it keeps happening, but then it comes sixth grade, we're like, our kids are magical, but in that fifth grade year, are there concepts that other schools are teaching their children because they've looked at the MSTEP and what's necessary, that now they have a tool or resource in the fourth grade at the end of the year, so their students have been exposed to it. So come fifth grade, it's a refresher. So when they take this test, they've been exposed to that information, and it's not new to them.
Right, yeah.
So I'm wondering,
Yeah, perhaps there's a lag in the amount of time that it's being taught and that it's being tested on.
I don't know.
And we think that the best way to continue to chase that is to try to get the resources and with our teacher leaders and fifth grade teachers that are doing this every day, is put those resources next to each other and try to find out what are some of the weaknesses within our math program within Vision that just perhaps is present in these other programs. And then as soon as we know what that is, take some attempts to supplement those resources.
And then of the top 5 schools that we are comparing ourselves to, how many of them actually use the same books that we're using?
I don't believe anybody in the county is using Vision. That's why we need to get, what's that? Is that true? Is it true?
There are a couple of them that do.
I'd have to look at the county list, and as folks review their curriculum over time, that is a continuing update, right? Once we enter a curriculum review and folks have said, Bloomfield uses Envision, right? That will either hold true or be outdated information. And I think it's helpful in thinking about how curriculum spirals across the school years. Those core areas of mathematics are being experienced from as early as kindergarten through graduating seniors in some cases, right? Things get a little more specific, a little more technical, but certainly in that K-5 realm, we're talking about elements that increase in complexity across the year rather than be completely brand new. And then when we look at, well, we're not receiving released items anymore, where we used to actually get the test item. Here's item 14. Here's where your children are struggling. Could really do some direct instruction to that and or program around it in a way that lined up children to have the information and the practice and the confidence with those skills at the time of the exam. What we're getting now are more general statements that would suggest more of the math practices. Some of the claims that are coming up as target areas in fifth grade, for example, are
basing arguments on concrete reference such as objects, drawings, and diagrams, analyzing existing models, and developing models of real phenomena. These are the areas that are noted as sort of a downward arrow. So those are the things that are a little more complex across a school year rather than please redo Unit 4 or please move this body of teaching 2 months earlier in the school year. But we'd like to gather those targets from across each of our elementary schools and see what kinds of trends we're seeing and how do the resources that we're going to examine address these kinds of claims that are certainly much broader in their application of mathematics. And we know that's a shift from plugging and chugging through an algorithm to how do I take a real world problem and take this mathematics and apply into it.
And we're also seeing it across the board. So the more that it is in all of our schools that this is occurring, the more it's suggesting that within that curriculum there's an alignment issue, particularly around a particular topic that isn't putting the kids in a position to be as strong as what their peers are doing in other districts. So we'll continue to dig into that and hopefully get a little bit closer to be able to supplement specifically for 5th grade and see if we can tease that out. I was going to jump to slide 15.
My mind went to a very fun activity that probably is totally irrelevant. It was like, what if our kids had this real life with this food dollars, right? Like, how do you play with the dollars that we do have? I don't know if this is even a possible scenario, but you know what I'm thinking? Like, every child has like, never mind. I was thinking like, give the kids a fund account, and we've got these food dollars, and you apply it, you walk in, you are purchasing your lunch, like what this thing's cost. But application, I've got $35 left. Being able to do that math and track those dollars, it just seems like a fun activity. I don't know if we can use the money for those kinds of things, but it seems like that application may. Tarik's like, no, so
No, I didn't say anything.
What I'm hearing you suggesting is that once we narrow in on the concepts, you'd like to be part of the planning team for those supplemental materials and see how we can strengthen our program so that we're not seeing that dip in 5th grade.
My third job, not this one.
If you jump to slide 15, now what this does and why this is helpful is now we're just taking all the 3rd through 7th grade and coming up with a average for the M-STEP for, in this case, all of ELA, and then doing that comparison across the county. You can see that we are running neck and neck with Birmingham, and then to put this into perspective too, I went back and checked where Bloomfield Hills was typically around years 2014 to 2018. And typically they were ranking at about 6th and 5th place at that time. So over time we've really been able to shift this data set to go from being in 6th place to now going back and forth between being 1st and 2nd for ELA. Similarly, if you just go one more slide to 16 for math, 3 through 7th, this has been a lot of steady progress, particularly for math, and yet there's still a lot that we want to be able to accomplish for math. And to put this into perspective, you can see that we're running close behind Novi. It's typically, historically been very strong in math. And going back to years 2014 to 2015, Bloomfield Hills was historically, during those years, at about 5th place in the county. One more slide. 17. Now it's a similar look, but this is just honing in on the PSAT. So M-STEP is 3 through 7, and then when we have 8th grade is the PSAT. Here you can see those top 3 districts. I mean, it's very close numbers, although we ended up on top there, but really statistically speaking, those are all very similar data points. So we are doing pretty well on PSAT, and we're also noticing that throughout the county, students are doing better on the PSAT. They're getting higher outcomes than those middle school years on the M-STEP. So it's likely that the way that all of us are teaching and instructional practices lend themselves more to the type of assessment that's being given in the PSAT than they are the MSTEP, which is good because the PSAT is a model for the SAT later on. Same look for the PSAT. If you go one more to slide 18, and you can see again, Bloomfield Hills, as Randy mentioned, we'd like to really see this improve in the area of math. It has come up over the years, but we'd like to see a little bit further. And you can see that here we're ranked 3rd in the county for that. I'm going to jump all the way now to slide 37. Slide 37 is going to break down all of the MSTEP data, 3 through 7, and now place that within all of our demographic groups. Again, an area that we really like to hone into is math, in particular with our Black and African American students as a subgroup within that. We really think we should be performing at a higher level in that area.
So 23 is the darker color.
Slide 23.
No. 2023, sorry.
No, the lighter color is Oakland County and the green is, we're on slide 37.
I'm still on almost slide 38, because that was more.
The reason why we put that next to Oakland County is so we can also see the trend data in that too. So we're knowing like, should it be dipping there, or should there not be such differences in those scores as you move across them. So it just sort of helps orient of how kids are doing in our county. So we would expect to be above those averages, but it at least helps us kind of orient and put in context what that proficiency rate is telling us.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah,
Is there any way to get similarly well-performing schools to compare our stats with them? Because I think Oakland County generally averages a lot lower.
Yes, the only reason why Oakland County is there is just so we're seeing the movement of those graphs, and we would expect that we would be above that, but perhaps have a similar trending line. And we categorize 4 to 5 districts throughout the county. It's not in this report right here, but we do track that by demographic data as well. So I could put that in a weekly board report, and our averages are strong in comparison to those other districts or those other right districts.
I was just curious because I want to focus on, or not me, but I hope that we can all focus in this district on non-white students and improving.
It's a great question, and we do collect our data that way, and then we are looking for those subgroups so we can see how we're doing, because it just helps put it into context, because a number in isolation of itself sometimes it's very hard to discern what that is telling you, but once you put it next to 3, 4, or 5 other districts, it starts framing out like, helps you come to some conclusions that we're really searching for to help us with our program. The other thing that we're doing is we like to stack data as a cohort moving throughout time, rather than comparing like 4 years worth of 3rd grade data. Those are all different groups of kids. But when we take a cohort and we are just simply chasing them from 3rd to 4th to 5th to 6th, that really helps us inform us a lot better than when we have all the grade levels just next to each other, but rather watching kids over time. And I could put that in the very next board report for you.
Remind me, what month do we take the MSTEP?
We are taking that.
In April.
I thought you said, yeah, April.
Each grade level has a 3 to 4 week window that's delivered to us by the state. We don't make those determinations.
We usually get about a week window in order to assess the different tests. Is that still true? Is it about a week or for each grade level?
I believe it's 3 or 4 weeks.
3 or 4 weeks.
Because I know this is, although you were not doing these 2 slides because we moved past them, 35 and 36. Looking at the 2023 in comparison to 2022 for our students, including our Asian Americans under the ELA. there are dips for 23 in comparison to 22 for Latinx. Is that correct? 79 to 54, 80 to 89. Am I reading this correctly? And significant dips for our students, including our white students. Was this report correct? Slide number 35.
35, yeah.
35.
Right. And then, so I think if you want to compare that then to other school districts, that would probably be a year of dip for school districts, because it's across the board, it's not just one. There's no, it's not like there are only some subgroups that had a dip, they pretty much all did.
What you also be
Students
able
with
to see the
IEPs
way we
got-
collect the data too.
Yeah, there we go.
Is that
Good point.
is the smaller the subgroup, also the size of that subgroup changes every year. And so the smaller the group, the more variance you can get sometimes just within those percentages. And so we do put like the real number next to the percent, so you can also see like how that is shaping that percent. So when I share that with you, we'll actually have to detail number of students and the percent, and then being able to watch that group over time,
Right.
how they're assessing.
Like if there's 10 students in a group and you get 4 high-achieving students show up to the school district, so they all pass, then your percentages are going to go up, not based on anything we do. So in
Or if
order
there's
to
like
assess
10
that information,
IEPs.
you need to take that into account. Same thing going the other way.
I think that context would be important to include, only because if I am a person reading this report without that context, slide 35 and 36, I think it's 36 too,
In fact, with that
are pretty
particular subgroup, you'll notice there's a bar missing, which likely means that it may have been under 10 students at that time. So anytime the group gets low enough for a number, then it doesn't report out for us. So we're not able to get that data.
figured out for that.
Right, so the state doesn't report out certain numbers of students depending like on what category it's in. So if it's total students, it's less than 10. If it's passing students, they'll asterisk it for less than 3 because they don't want to have any personally identifying information.
So I thought that was kind of interesting, and I thought that was the concept, but I know you haven't
Can't
gotten to
identify
this
the children
slide number,
themselves.
which is the one I was on before. 39, only because to that concept, 2023 for African American students, are we saying there were fewer than 10 students that, because there's no 2023 data.
In 8th grade math, yes.
So sometimes that is not data that we can pull out for these tables if the subgroup is too small. But within our records, that would not be generated in the same way, might be able to see what those numbers are. And that's what I'll put in that board report, to look at these subgroups by cohort as well as the comparison data that we have to other like districts within the county. Those same 4 to 5.
Only
Todd,
because
are
I want to make sure I'm understanding what you're saying. So for 8th grade math, in the district, there were fewer than 10 students that completed. the
Depends on what
SAT.
sometimes
That's what
it's 10, sometimes it's 30. So
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
Sarah. But
That's right.
I was going to say I recall 30 being a threshold number
30 is
as
being a
well.
threshold for PSAT.
Yes.
So we would have had,
Threshold too.
so depending on how the students identified, that would actually have been, and that, with the other numbers I have, that seems about actually accurate.
Just good points to kind of make. Bars disappear. Think about the 10.
I'm sorry, I couldn't.
That's just good points to continue to make for spaces where data doesn't exist, just so I can understand.
Right,
I'm
it's
looking
not-
also at the, which we just talked about Latinx students. And it appears in previous, but this means that these individual students didn't show up on that day to participate in the exam,
Or there's not enough actually in that group,
or not enough.
like just enrolled
We don't have that many.
We don't have that
at
many
grade level.
students that identify in that space.
And what I'm
To make
looking
it,
at,
to make it be, like, we still get their data, they're just not going to be identified, because then that way it allows it to look at a data trend versus like, I can see that John here didn't do
I
it.
guess maybe I'm just surprised that we have fewer than 30 African-American students that were in the 8th grade. That's just
What I'm looking
surprising
at-
to
Correct.
me.
what I'm looking at says that there were 24. And so, but I'll be able to share this raw data with you because there's different requirements on, if I'm putting something in the weekly board report for you versus doing a
Public.
public presentation. So I'll be able to give you this raw data and then you'll be able to see some of those numbers. So sometimes if the cohorts are too low, we just can't report the data. But I have this.
I think Carrie's given the presentations, I remember her explaining that piece. To me, my mind didn't go to that being in the population that number would be too low to report. I could see the Latinx population because I know we have fewer, but as far as that population, I realized that grade level would be
Yeah,
that
for-
low.
8th grade, that particular demographic group is the size of 17 for this testing cycle. So that's for the missing bars, but I'll be able to put that in the next board report. You'll be able to see the real number and percentages, as well as some like districts and what their percentages are. But sometimes we're not able to get their percentages if there's subgroups also are so low that we're not able to, through a public record or document or through my school, we're not able to get that data, so we just leave that. But there's enough in there that you'd be able to discern some type of information off of it.
Thank you.
Jumping to 43. This is a look at SAT trend data over time. And just going to reiterate again, math is definitely an area where we'd like to see some improvement within the SAT. And you might remember we presented quite a bit on math last year. And we are definitely seeing our internal data starting to suggest that we are going to see some movement on the SAT, particularly with math in the next couple of years. So we're hoping for that.
What's interesting to me is when you look at, say, whatever the top 4 or 5 districts in the county, you got the PSAT scores, and as you said, that those tend to be fairly high, like even higher than the MSTEP scores. But when you look at the other districts, or you look at all the districts, there is a decrease from PSAT to SAT scores, but at least for the last 2 years, our district has decreased by more, so I'm just like...
There's a few things that are playing out there. So what we're seeing when we go back and look at the cohort, let's say if they were 5th, I think that's where this was falling in line. I think I already moved past that slide, but let's say they were 4th or 5th. And we look back, that's where they were over time from like 4th grade through 8th grade. And then another thing that we're seeing in that, John, is particularly around how many kids are getting through algebra by the end of 8th grade. So when you're assessing in 8th grade, that hasn't yet gone off into 2 different directions. And so like this testing class, I believe, I had it right here in front of me. So this year's seniors, when they were in 8th grade, only 26% of the students were able to get through algebra. There were more restrictions on getting into algebra at that time. We've been able to pull that apart and create more access to that program. And then this group here is in those mid-20s, whereas the grade levels behind them, so the class of 25, 37%, were able to get through algebra by the end of 8th grade. Class of 26, 38%, and when we get to the class of 27, 52% were able to get through 8th grade. So one of the things that's occurring is as students are accelerated in math going into geometry as a 9th grader, if other districts have more students going into geometry, that means they are our entire math class above most of our kids when they are all juniors. So they're testing, yet they are at different levels of math when they're taking the SAT. So by opening up access into getting and completing algebra by the end of 8th grade, we should have as many students comparable in higher level math courses by the time our students are taking the SAT. And so right now, this is taking time to play out because a lot of those changes occurred after they were already through 8th grade. So once we get to the point where we do have more students that were able to get through algebra by the end of 8th grade, they're further along in their math programming than before. We have higher percentages. We should see those SATs scores go up, or at least be more competitive in the county.
I'll be watching. I guess I'd like to know, I mean, this isn't a part of this discussion, but like, what is, now that like we're kind of like increasing access to algebra, like what is the success rate for the students in those algebra classes, and how is that work, how is that working for teachers, how is that, working for everyone involved? And we've talked about this before, but just about needing the building blocks to go into that class. You can't just show up at algebra like if you're not ready, So I think I'm hopeful and optimistic that the plan to have a little bit more math in middle school prepares them for that opportunity. I'm not certain the kids are prepared right now.
Those numbers that I read back in 2014 to 2015, when the district was 6th in the county for math, those students are now at the high school working their way through that math program. Whereas our students in K-8 right now are really delivering top of the county proficiency rates. They will matriculate to the high school as well. So we should start to see a shift, while also trying to put in a lot of supports for the students that are at the high school right now and over the last couple of years to support them as they move on through high school and are jumping into whatever career path or college they're moving off to.
I think the two together, which I hear just saying, like this year's 8th graders, 50% of them are in Algebra 1. Next year's 8th graders will have had a full year of the extended block math, so they'll have more skills going into that space. And then what we've also looked at, though, and this is to your point, is that we've had some students who've taken algebra as 9th grader or as 8th graders, and then they go into geometry. Those of us we've all gone through that. Geometry is a different beast than algebra, and then all of a sudden you go back to algebra 2, and maybe algebra wasn't your favorite friend, and now you're coming back to a harder version of it. We actually have a class that allows you to prepare for algebra 2 while you're currently in geometry. So that idea of, yep, you got through 8th grade algebra, you were a C, B to a C student in there, you're getting a little bit nervous about algebra 2, we are going to give you a class that helps you prepare, like launch you into the algebra 2 to make sure that you're ready for it. So there are a couple places that we've seen some gaps and some concerns, but also supporting them as they go in, but also when they come out, we can support them when they go on to that next algebra 2 class.
We're going to be monitoring this very closely too, because we're also suspicious that the structure of everyday math at the high school is not lending itself for all students. So up until you get into 9th grade,
you were saying every other day math.
Every other day. What did I?
You said everyday math.
Every day.
Don't confuse people.
Up until 8th grade, where you're in a math class every day, and then once you go into the high school, and part of this started to dissolve when the two schools, high schools, came together and started with that everyday math schedule. So that could be a discipline that struggles within that framework. But then we're also looking to.
Well, to be clear, there are a couple different things that we have going on at the high school. There's always been every other day math since at least 2001 in terms of our high school schedule. What we have embedded now, and has been there for some time, has been the extensions classes. So if you take pre-calculus, calculus, anything basically beyond geometry, there is an extension class available for you, so you could experience math every other day. That's the joy of a schedule that has a little bit of flexibility in it. So your regular class might be on A days, 3rd hour, and then on B days, 4th hour, you have your extension class, which allows you additional practice and or support to be successful in that class. The question is, do all students take advantage of that? No. Some of them want to take on additional electives or other types of things, so that's always available for them. Our counselors are exceptionally great at making sure students understand what that can offer to them. It can be a launching pad, it can be a support area, it can be a little bit of a release valve, however you want to use it. So we are working really hard to make sure we continue to identify the students that would most benefit from those extension classes. So the issue is with 9th and 10th grade, with algebra and geometry, there isn't space in those middle schools, in those NYP schedules to allow for that extension class to go in, but that does actually then end up happening in the ID hour.
So for the students that are identified, this is a benefit to them.
They are strongly encouraged.
So that conversation is had with the counselor and the
The
student?
counselor and the teacher and the student. So moving, as you go to create your schedule for next year, I'll give you an example. You're honestly, right now you're in Algebra 2, you're about to move into AP Pre-Calc. How did you feel about math? This is always my favorite conversation with students, is that yes, you have a B or an A in math, but how hard are you working for that grade?
I don't remember the extension being in the booklet,
It is in the booklet. It's just a little bit, if you don't know what you're looking for. So we're working really hard at recreating that. So there are lots of moving pieces. One of the things that we are doing right now is recreating that course guide so that people can start to see how that falls. There is a planning sheet. And then in there is the option, like, do you want to take an elective or do you want to take the extension class? So part of the reason why we come to you in January with new courses is because in February we start the counseling conversation, so that by May, June, we can have all of the things into the system. It seems it's a long process to it, but there is that whole extension piece to it where we start to identify what would work best for you. But it goes back to that idea of, I could be an A student in math, and you have no idea that I spend 6 hours every single night to be an A student in math. Is there a chance that somewhere within our schedule I could get that support instead of having it, all be on me? That it's every kid presents differently at school. Yep, you're an A student, but we don't know what goes behind that A. When I was at the IA, I had the same conversation. At what point, how much effort are you putting into this grade, and is that actually a sustainable effort?
And if I were to participate in the extension, does it count toward my graduation credits?
Yes, it counts towards elective. There is no detriment to it. That's the greatest part about the high school schedule is we offer over the course of 4 years 32 credits that you are able to take. 28 of them are graduation requirements. So if you take a math extension, it's just considered an elective. You have anywhere, depending on where you fall in your course, you have anywhere from 9 to 11 electives. A math extension is an elective.
I do have more on that, but we'll talk on the side.
Sure.
So I'm very, I like the booklet, so I'm very intrigued.
Oh, I know you like the book. I will be sure to send it your way and have you put your little magic dust on it, and we'll be all good.
So we are looking.
I'm excited about the booklet.
So we are looking for more opportunities to give kids that would be more successful in these higher level math courses an experience where they can be engaged in math every single day, and that might be one of the things. By having that in place, we can see a little bit more success. So within that schedule, that is an area that we want to monitor closely over the next few years. Was I on slide?
43?
It was 40 in the 40s because I distracted you.
Oh, that's, okay, so I think we're going to jump to, we have two more. I was going to jump to 52 and then 54. 52 and 54 is now breaking down the SAT, similar to how you saw the M-STEP and the PSAT. This is breaking it down now into our demographic data. So similar format than what you saw before, and then you can see not all the data is present there. Again, that's likely due to the cohort size not being large enough, but when I share the raw data with you, you'll be able to see that information. '52 was on ELA, and then slide 54 was math. That was it.
That's good. Before we move on, I just want to say that there's a lot of very positive information in there. I know I point out the areas of improvement, but it's not meant to be, negative. That's the way I look at information. I just look for, the holes,
Sure.
So, but there's a lot of positives.
It's a punchline.
I don't know, John, we didn't hear that too loudly.
Lots of positive.
And Trustee Southward, you always ask about, and I so appreciate where are some areas of growth that we have seen. So when we are looking at the data, we did look at the Algebra 1 enrollment. Both Randy and Todd had spoken to it regarding how many 8th graders were in Algebra 1. And so going back just to 2018, 2019, just because that seemed like the 5-year trend is a nice trend, we really looked at the both the gatekeeping of keeping kids out of that, and also like opening up that access, but also the sports to go into that. So one of the things that I'm super excited about is in 2018, 2019, only 6.7% of our 8th graders that were identified as Black were in Algebra 1 as 8th grade. This year, that number is that number for the current 8th graders is 26%. Last year's, so this year's freshman class, last year's 8th grade class was 39.3%. That, because of the smaller cohort size, 1 or 2 kids will make those numbers jump a bit, but the fact that we went from 6% to 26% is something to celebrate. For students that identify as Middle Eastern, that went from 25% to 58%. Special education went from 5% to 15%. So, and then students that identify Hispanic or Latinx, it went from 27.3% to 67%. So we're really happy with that idea of opening up that access space to having half the class be in Algebra 1, but also that we are seeing the same, if not a greater increase in those who otherwise were not part of that program, now being more part of that program. So things that we're excited about, and we'll keep on trying. I know you it's not in this data, it's in separate data, but we're also seeing that exact same notes in the IB and AP classes in terms of enrollment and participation. So we're excited about that the work that we've been doing is really starting to show in both enrollment and participation.
It's a really good time for us to be partnering with the EOS, Equal Opportunity Schools. You might remember that from last year, because this is the focus of their work. We haven't really dug in with the EOS yet, but as they move into this partnership, that's their approach, is looking at access to higher level math courses. How do we open up those pathways so that kids can get to where they want to be? And so it's nice to see that we're already trying to reshape our data, that we're tracking the access points, and then that later will play out in the SAT, because as those demographic groups appear in those higher level math classes at greater rates, then also we should see that success on the SAT as well, because that experience will then produce better outcomes on the SAT. So a lot is kind of moving in that direction towards the SAT, and we should see some positive trends starting to hit that area. And with the EOS, Equal Opportunity Schools, will be tracking that very closely over the next few years, and that's one of the reasons why we brought them in, because we're really shifting our focus to making sure that there's access to these higher level math courses at the high school level, and that we don't have predictable outcomes sitting within those demographic groups, and that they are represented similarly to our demographics within the building.
I have a question, or did you have a question?
I do, but go ahead, that's fine.
Well, it's just a micro question versus macro level thinking. I guess I'm just curious if there's a child out there, a student, who isn't sure they want to excel in math. Is there anything to push them, or, what is the process?
That's also what the EOS does, is help us identify interests and then make sure that we have multiple pathways going to college readiness math courses. So not everybody has to go to calculus to take a college ready course. A lot of that can also be guided towards AP stats and other experiences. So that's part of our work with the EOS, is to identify those interests so that we're drawing kids into the pathway that's right for them, where they have a passion, and so we should be doing that. Is there anything you want to add?
Well, I would also, I think depends on the age of the child, right? But one of the things that you can do at the high school level is CTE courses will also count for math courses. So oftentimes a student will struggle with I'm going to sit here and do algebra at a table, but you go out there and put me into my engineering course that is hands-on building things, that is allowed to be considered, that should be allowed, that is within the Michigan framework, that is a math course. And so I think there are times that we need to look at actually authentic hands-on examples of how you can fulfill those things. I know I'm pointing at Michelle because she'd be really excited about the new handbook that we're creating, but, or the course book. But one of the things we just wanted to start to identify are those areas of professional studies that if you are interested in architecture, engineering, these are the classes that we offer, but these are also the classes that you can take through OTEC or through a college course that may take you out of a classroom and sitting and doing AP Calc, but instead having you doing computer science principles or doing coding or doing something else. Those are all considered math courses as well. And so to help students to change their framework of what math has to be. So that's where EOS is also going to help us. But another way to look at that is we've embedded the Project Lead the Way design courses into our middle school math courses. Those will all happen in second semester in those courses, but those are also meant to be STEAM-based experiences in those math courses to start to open up those pathways a little bit more at the high school level for them to look at different ways that they can demonstrate and or engage with math.
I really like to ask that question in the direction that Sarah took on that, because also what that raises is going back to the MOD initiative. This was one of the reasons why we wanted to leverage new physical spaces so that we could bring STEAM in a more significant fashion K-8. And so we weren't directly talking about STEAM and bringing those, we were more traditional within the math programming, but that really helps broaden out how kids view mathematics and also the practical experiences they're having. But so I'm glad Sarah went in that direction because that's also a significant initiative that we're currently moving through right now is really enhancing those making across the curriculum, STEAM experiences, and the spaces that the community helped us build were absolutely pivotal for us to be able to do this.
Well, that sounds good, having options and opportunities like that. Sounds really important in their journey towards what they want to do.
And I think it's important to say that the journey towards post-secondary, it's not always a journey towards college, and to recognize that there's many different ways you can demonstrate your knowledge.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yep.
Trustee Fowler, you said?
Yeah. I guess I'm answering my own question, but I'm assuming the SAT numbers for the report, IA and BHS is one?
No, IA is not part of that.
So
those
there's no
numbers.
IA numbers in there?
Correct, this is all, yeah.
That used to occur.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons why the high school doesn't have the perception of having the same SAT results now, because there was a change, I think it was back in around 2017 that data got pulled apart.
Yep.
And so now it is only the high school's data that AI students, I'm sorry, I did artificial.
AI is next week.
Yes, the IA students are not in that data set with high school.
And then what was I know I've talked about this with you before, but I just can't remember. What was the year that the curriculum change took place for math? And so what would be the last, where would we see that change? Where we would expect students that, were the first ones in place, and then the last ones who were in that old style of
Where would they be right
site-based? Yeah, where are we at with that? So
Much
we
of
can
that
track
occurred
that.
right before COVID, so I believe that was at the beginning of the 2019-2020 school year that we're fully implementing Envision Math K-5. Is that correct? Kimberly, am I getting
In the fall, a year late, in the fall of 2018, we began our professional learning around a brand new resource.
Yep.
And so for students who were in 5th grade during that time, they made a transition from what had been happening, right, into some new design, learning design, and then went off to middle school. So 18-19 is our very first year of implementation, and this is year 6 of that. So depending on which elementary grade level we start with, right, those kindergartners are now 6th graders.
Right. So there's
So
still...
it's the current seniors. I think Todd's doing the math, I think, over there.
If you were in 5th grade, in the 17-18 school year, is that what we said?
18-19.
18-19,
Yeah.
then you are a senior.
You're a senior this year.
You were a junior last year and had Envision Math for one year. And then every year you go back, then you're increasing the amount of time that students had.
Correct. But there's still going to be a number of students who they've got a, I don't want to call it a gap, but a different style of learning.
Well, I think it's also, we've talked about this before, that when this year's seniors were in 8th grade and freshmen, that's when COVID also hit. So they had, so it's kind of, it's almost like how they were saying in the audit, it's an asterisk year,
Yeah.
right? Where it's, they got doubly hit, they got hit with, or triply hit, however you want to look at it. It was 1 year of envision, they go through the middle school, and then the end of their 8th grade year, if they're in algebra or not in algebra, that year is cut short, and then their freshman year in high school was also different. It was a hybrid year and hybrid learning. So I think that I'm looking forward to seeing how this year's juniors do, because they've had longer in that space, but they also, algebra is such a foundational piece for high school mathematics.
Yeah.
To have that be your interrupted years is kind of tough. But so I think we're seeing through, but there might be a wobble, I think is the best way to phrase that. I don't think that I think we've had longer period of time to really identify where those are. We also did Big Ideas Mathematics, which is new in that same time frame, where now that is our 6-11 math space, so that there is a consistent mathematical experience from 6th through 11th grade. The reason why I say 11th grade is because that gets you through Algebra 2. After that, you go off into your AP and different worlds, but that is the same system all the way through. So again, you're not jumping from one mathematical, like you had an elementary mathematical program and then a middle school one and then a high school one. They're all the same 6-12.
Okay.
So this group is going through that all the way through. The current juniors had that since 6th grade.
Okay. I only bring it up just because we're obviously doing a lot for, you can see it. I mean, and hats off to everybody that's been involved with all of this, from this level, but throughout the educational process with teachers and everything. You can see it. The the MSTEP data for both ELA and math, it's evident. There's some minor things here and there, I think, to understand, but in general, the proof is kind of in the pudding, but you can still see very evident that math at the higher level is definitely still, a plaguing problem that persists. So that was my question of, to support those students, how many groups of students have left from that period of time when they had the site-based in their K through 5 years that we need to augment. And I think we talked about at one of the meetings, as we get to the summer months, does that become an opportunity to look at ways to offer other forms of tutoring or services to help these students out? It's just a fact. Students that are able to have math or SAT in general be a priority because they have the means to do so, or because whatever other reasons. I mean, it's an easy thing, and then there's a bigger hurdle for students that can't. And we shouldn't have to have that as a means that you have to get you have to get tutoring or you have to get this special assistance. So whatever we can do, especially for those students that need that extra support, I think is huge. But I am looking forward to the days when this MSTEP data kind of is reflected in the later years.
And I think, as you know, kids all come at different times. So I love the fact that when you have 7th graders, you actually have 11-year-olds all the way up to 13-year-olds in the same grade, right? So everyone's developmentally at a different space, and so the idea is, are we catching them when we need to catch them, and are we accelerating them when we need to accelerate them? So you might be ready at 12. John, you're sitting next to me. Sorry, you might be ready at 11 to start, and making sure we catch that as we go through. And I think that's part of where the assessment data that we have. This is one data point, but I think the routine and formative assessments that we do all the way through allow us to catch and support, or catch and accelerate as we go through, because that's the joy of teaching students, is that they don't all present to you the same way. And so, but to your point, that's what I think some of the design elements that we've incorporated allow students to be like, oh, math could be this. Now I see myself as a mathematician.
Right.
It's much the same as we always say about reader. You never say to a student, I'm bad at reading, I never read. But sometimes the language is, I'm bad at math, don't worry about it. No. We want everyone to be happy and excited and understanding math.
Sure.
So capturing and accelerating, it sounds a weird way of saying that, is really our goal, where we'll start to see the results in here, but really the formative assessments we use are really helpful in catching those kids.
We're so excited. Oh, go ahead. You want to add
Yeah, I just want to add something too. And when you're looking and you're comparing the cohort from your 8th grade year, you're testing again in your junior year. That's a completely different cohort.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? Because we've lost really 30 or so, 35 of our top scholars. They're now in the IA data. And we've supplanted, we've gained 30 or 35 students because we generally balance out there that are new to the district, that haven't had our math education through 8th grade. So where they are, maybe it's great education that they have in the past, maybe it's off cycle from where we're at. So those students are coming into the fold too. You are comparing a little bit of a different
No, I mean,
demographic for
100%.
sure.
And you'll hear me, I always say I'm more concerned with cohort data and making sure students are progressing at their own level. So I'll never,
Right.
I never look at a single number, whether it's this, whether it's AP scores, and say, no, we're horrible. But I do see a trend with math that's persistent.
Sure,
right?
and we-
So I think it's clear that it's a target area, especially at the higher grades.
Yep.
For sure.
You should have been here a few years ago, wasn't this,
Still,
to John's point,
still declining.
we were, but we're in a good space to move on and continue this conversation at the board table, which is a great discussion. So we're gonna move on to item number 3E, all hearts and minds are satisfied?
It's my favorite phrase, my mom.
All right.
Thank you,
So,
Michelle.
No, you think you're sure.
Dr. Leva?
Yes, so we have the second reading for the board policy updates. We did get a few comments from board members. If you remember, we had the first reading, and we asked you to take a look at if you had any suggestions for us, to go ahead and send them to the Google Doc, which again, we did receive a few updated comments, and we're ready for second reading. So Keith, you want to provide any detail? And/or Carolyn?
I would say, and Carolyn, you can jump in too. We did have just a couple comments and questions that we did send off to our policy group over at Miller Johnson, and they did respond to those questions, and we put them right into that document for you all to review. And so if anybody has any additional questions for either myself or Carolyn, we'll be happy to address those for you.
So I have a question. We're reading it today, but we are having this conversation again on the 26th, correct?
So the 26 we would take to, that would be your, what we call the final reading, and you would vote on them at that time.
Just want to make sure we're all. Any other questions? Dr. Moran?
Oh, I was just going to add that I requested through our attorney that we were working with, whether we can get numbers on how many EpiPens are used and opioid antagonists. Is that how you say it?
Antagonist.
Antagonists, there we go. And they were fine with that, just no student data, of course.
Right. We can
Does
get
it-
numbers, but not names.
Yeah.
Yep.
But I don't know if we would all want that
We would.
included as well.
Yeah, and if we ever had a situation in a school where we were having to utilize an EpiPen or an opiate antagonist, we would definitely be informing the board.
And that's going to be in a separate.
What numbers, wait.
No, that's not part, that was not part of the policy, it was a
I'm saying, like, could
question.
it be
Just
something
a
that's
question
sent to us,
about-
like,
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
thank
Yeah.
you. Not in this document.
Not in this
Right,
document,
okay.
I just want to make sure.
Yeah, correct.
All right. Any other questions? All right. Thank you so much. We look forward to that discussion. You want to add anything else? All right, moving right along to item number F. Trustee Fala?
Yep. So we met with Rebecca. When does that meeting we had?
September 26th, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah.
Okay. And we met, and the students had really, really phenomenal goals. Kind of high level. Here's what we all talked about. Here's things that we've observed. I was blown away because they were better than the things that I had started putting some potential ideas because you just never know. I'm like, maybe the kids will come with nothing, whatever. They came with things that were really good. So they've got those high level goals. We talked about it as a group. Some of them we're going to try to maybe break and make sure it's things that the students themselves can act upon. Some of them might be takeaways for Dr. Leopi and his team to look into more. So we're trying to come up with a date now with the students so we can meet with them again and kind of go over that. But yeah, I think really great progress so far. We're ahead of the curve where we were last time, so we're making some tremendous effort in getting some real changes that these kids feel strongly about. And to me, they were all really good.
They did a nice job. They did a very nice job.
Yeah. So.
Do you know if there is a plan for them to speak, present at a board meeting?
Yeah, we're not there yet
We're
for
not
sure.
there. I would suspect that once we have the goals fleshed out and we can definitively say, here's the
action plan.
language of the goal, here's, when we want to complete it by and all of that, I think definitely they'd be able to present to the board and give a high-level presentation.
And we're so used to our board interns coming and speaking, giving, us an update, so we look forward to that. Any other questions? All right, thank you. Trustee Paul. Okay, Rebecca. All right. Trustee Van Gilmer, anything up with the bond oversight?
No, we didn't meet this week. Kind of in like a lull space. We did meet to kind of look the week prior. We discussed some of the punch list items that are popping up at the various schools, and kind of went over the cause for some things and when things are going to be finalized. I think it's all still a work in progress. I'll probably have more information for you at the next meeting.
I think we flushed some things out. Jake didn't get that joke. We flushed some things out.
We've had some other issues this week with sewers, so it's not a little too soon.
Okay.
It hurts a little bit.
All right, add joke.
Looking forward to the next update. All right, moving right
I
along.
didn't catch it at first.
All right, item 3H.
He's not punny.
So if everyone can take a look at their October 26th framework for the meeting. I'm going to go through. I'm really looking at Rebecca. She's not giving me any eye contact.
Oh, I'm sorry, what?
You're
26th.
my friend.
I said I'm really looking at Rebecca to make sure
Okay,
that I do this
I'm
correctly.
ready.
All right, so number one seems to always be intact, so we have no questions there. Administrative appointments.
So
We have one.
we're in a position to bring the assistant superintendent for business, and we think we'll be in place to bring the associate principal for Eastover. Am I correct about that?
Please.
Why? I feel like there was another. Okay, just the two?
Yes.
Okay. All right, item number 3, special recognition. Wonderful, merit semifinalists, looking forward to those. IA, will Lynn be there?
Yep, we'll have the principals for IA and BHS about the National Merit semifinalists and commended students.
And then also the assistant principal of the year? Okay.
Yep.
Wonderful. Public comment, number 4, superintendent report is there. Board president report. Do we, okay, seeking funding in your separate update.
It doesn't matter. We could combine those again like we did today.
Works well for me.
Yeah.
It works well for you. Okay.
Yeah, either way.
Consent agenda, if you want to take a look at the items, trustees, to see if there's any questions on the items that are under the consent. Seems pretty standard. Any questions on 8? Number 9, special reports, which is what we received today from Donna, which would be the high-level conversation. And then 10, general discussion. This is what Todd and his,
Would you like us to narrow it down?
And typically, I think at the,
Slide presentation?
typically we just review the slide presentation at the formal board meeting. Today's the day for additional discussion, but at the formal board meeting, then we hit some of the highlights of the slides. Of course, at that point in time, entertain any questions or comments. But it's a little different presentation than tonight.
Yeah, we're looking forward to it. Anything else? Did anyone add anything for Todd now? Or hold your peace? All right, moving on. Board business number 11A.
Just accepting the audit report?
Yes. And there is a motion? Okay.
Yep.
So be prepared, trustees, to read that. What's B?
That's it. Go ahead.
That's for me. So basically, Mary Ann's been asking us for the past 2 years to replace her catering van, and I just can't get a vehicle. It's one of the hardest things to do right now. And I was able to lock in a Ram Pro Master from LaFontaine, and they're actually holding it for us, which is unheard of. But it's going to be in the cost of $52,600 that I will present to the board as part of the My Deal contract bid. And this is for a 3500 Pro Master. And it's like a food van. So we were able to, she purchased a liftgate van 2.5 years ago. And then she said, I hate to do this to you, but I also need a catering van when I go back and forth to the buildings. This is going to help spend down that money that we just found out that we need to spend down. So she's looking forward.
Spend food service money.
Yeah.
Okay, well, this is the easiest.
Yes.
Yeah. So basically, this comes out of her budget, and then we get ownership of it. It's a win-win
I mean,
for
it's a
everybody.
Christmas present for Mary Ann, for sure.
Yeah.
She'll be excited.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. She's beyond.
Thanks.
I was kind of hoping that was part of the deal. That would be kind of cool.
Yeah.
So that's the first, right? That's B, and then we jump over to C. The grounds department is in need of 2 Toro Groundmaster mowers, and unfortunately, they come in at a whopping cost of $172,470.48
Or together.
for both together.
I saw
That's a
that.
mower.
Yeah.
It's,
So,
And I looked at, I Googled them because I was like,
Yeah.
what?
yeah, and there's no.
Does it fly?
No,
Right.
there's no frills to this. This is a base model. You know, these are like the big X-wings is what they are. They got the side wings, and it can cover a big like 12-foot mowing section at a time. And when you think about the amount of land that we have in this district, we have 5 mowers. These 2 are over 20-some years old. One has a blown engine. We're going to put some money back into the engine just so we can auction it off and get good value for it. But we're really hoping that the board supports this decision so we can continue cutting the grass in the district, and this would come out of capital equipment
Or
fund.
the alternative is for us to get some volunteers to push the.
We can get some goats. I'm sure Alan
Yeah.
would give us some goats. And they can just run wild.
Earlier.
Jake thought this was a good time after he brought the $58,000 rebate from DTE.
Yeah, I know
so-
how it's kind of easy. to
Timing
do that.
We actually have the grounds department in my office every day saying, what do you think we're going to get these mowers? You think it's an option?
Plus, the van doesn't look very expensive now that you.
Van's very cheap.
I totally looked at them like, what?
John
$80,000
says
for a lawnmower?
It's the same crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it was like $48,000 2.5 years ago when Ken Vavruska approached the board to have it purchased. So they've almost doubled in price.
I will say this, and this is just because I did literally watch, they were cutting the grass, and something must have either got caught or it wasn't working because it was 2 guys over a lawnmower doing like this and doing like this.
Oh, okay.
This was during the summer, and I
Sure.
was like,
Yep.
I hope it's not broken. I hate to have to be the pusher.
To get
Right.
around, sure.
So that you may have gotten a phone call during that
Yeah, I'm
time.
sure we did.
That time. So, fun times. Just thought that was a cool moment to share.
And then, of course, we jump to D, and that's me again, asking for a purchase of 2 John Deere Gators for athletics. Mike Cowdery kind of came to us and said, when
What is a gator?
it's like a little utility vehicle, and that. And
Athletics stadiums.
And with the addition of a turf field at South and with North being online,
It's like
Is this
a,
like a golf?
Yeah, I was gonna say, think of it as like
With a big-
pumped up golf cart.
Yeah.
It's got bigger tires.
Golfer
with the big,
equipment,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
but one of the things that our department does is we will borrow this to drag the turf fields with our, it's called a litter cat, and that's for the turf to
Yep.
groom it. So
You didn't gotta do that.
we have to do it in order to protect our investment. So when we first started this,
it's got the big
the
storage.
prices were kind of up there. These are stripped down. They're about $14,000 a piece. $14,296. It comes from the My Deal again. There's no frills to this. There's no air conditioning. There's no enclosure. This is pretty much just an open cart to do athletic needs and.
So they're hauling stuff from the baseball field over to somewhere else.
Right.
They throw it in the gator and off they go.
And then they might throw a drag on it so they could drag the fields, like the baseball fields.
Where do they store them?
We have, at north, we have a spot inside that little roll-up door area they could store them, and then at south, as long as that's empty, we could store it there.
Yeah, they'll just go.
Good point.
These are very popular.
Do they hold any, beverages ever, or?
You could throw stuff.
There might be a cup holder in there, or a Gatorade or something.
It's not gonna make it
But
to the game.
I'm wondering, can we use the food service budget if they hold,
That's
their-
all.
I see where you're going. Look at you. There you go.
Unfortunately not.
It could go supply the concession stand.
Oh,
Right.
see?
Right.
I mean, there's pretty,
We
isn't
just
there
had
a
the
lot of wiggle
auditors here,
room with
they're
that
watching
buffer?
this video.
Yeah. I'm not part of this conversation.
All right, you got
It's the
another
new
one?
Howard.
No, that's it.
Trying to
Wanna have
money
another
for different pots.
Oh, phew.
Okay, then E is,
So I'll probably just change that to read final reading and adoption of board policy updates or policies.
thank you, Rebecca. And then placeholder for our community partners committee, are you good?
So, we could actually talk about it now, because we were anticipating setting anything up this week.
Okay. Can we go through the other agenda and then we'll come back?
Yeah.
Okay. Is everybody okay with that?
And so we don't need to talk about it on the 26th then?
As long as we're okay with,
What we hear today?
Yes.
Yeah, because Paul is already in agreement with everything that you presented. Okay. So we'll remove F. All right, moving on to the other agenda for November 9th. One is standard, two is standard, 3A, B are standard, C. What's that? Foundation.
We have a foundation presentation that day.
So this is a carryover from last year, and so I've spoken with Mary Ellen, and it seems like this date's gonna work for some representation to come to discuss ways that the foundation board and our board can collaborate to support the district's students and staff.
Works for us. Okay. Looking forward to that conversation. Curriculum topic?
Yeah, right now, we don't have one. You and I have discussed a potential one, but we're hoping to have that pushed off to maybe December, where we've had a little bit more of the start of the year as it relates to the levels.
So remove D.
Well, I'm not saying remove it, we just don't have anything right now. So if we have something, we'll let the board know in advance.
Okay, that's a maybe.
Yeah, so we'll just leave the placeholder there for now, and if we don't have anything, we'll remove it. If there's something we want to cover, then we'll bring it to you ahead of time.
Awesome. E is standard.
Yep.
F and G are also standard. Awesome. Moving back, can I get a motion to add, does that matter? Do you need a motion to add?
Actually, I think it was on the original.
Did I skip
Today's
it?
agenda.
I don't think you need to because it's under the board report outs. So we got the committee report outs.
Did I skip you? Sorry about that.
I saw it on the coming agenda, so I figured we'd get to it.
My apologies, trustee Fowler. I was thinking about that conversation about GP or GB.
The what?
Wait,
The
Our
C.
GB conversation. And so it made me skip over that item. Rebecca's
Okay.
looking at one of them back.
All right, so we had previously sent out the Community Partnership Committee, like a rough draft of what it would be to the rest of the trustees. Yeah, so I mean, I don't need to go ad nauseum, but the goal is to engage with the community, to be able to establish just that this is not going to be, another sounding board to just talk. The goal is to really get people together and say, what are some common things that we think we could improve upon together as a community within the school district, find those, support the students, obviously, improve communication, improve trust, those kinds of things. So we have, saw the email you sent a second ago. So on the board webpage, we'll have a spot on there that people can go there, explain what this is all about, and then have a link to get to the application form. So the application form will ask some information about whoever wants to apply, name, why are you interested, what qualities do you bring, that would help you be a part of the committee. And the goal is to accept that through the 29th. And then after that, obviously, depending on how many people we get, we'll kind of have a sense for how big will this community go from there. But that's kind of the time frame, is get it published now, get communication going out in terms of email to the community about what this is, probably just a link to the board webpage that has this on there, with the link to apply and get people interested. So I doubt everybody's watching the study session right now, but I guess if people are looking for a way to engage, because people often ask, I don't really want to, I'm sure people email the board, or they want to do something but they're not sure of the way. Like, this would be a great opportunity to get involved. If you've got things that you think you could help the school district, or if you want to collaborate and talk about ways that we feel we can improve, this would be the space to do it. When we're at the board meetings, it's really hard when people have a concern, they have a complaint, they have an idea, you can't really talk to them. And emails are really hard to collaborate on, so this is that opportunity to get people that forum so we can have that kind of communication. So I'm excited. I know Paul's not here, but he's a part of it. He's been working with me on that. So yeah, we're eager and excited to get it going. But unless there's any other notes, otherwise we were planning on getting this going out to the community, I guess, this weekend, probably. Yeah.
So we work with, you're shaking your head, Karen.
Yeah, if it's approved, we can put something on social media like tomorrow or Saturday or Sunday. Next week is safety week, so we have posts every day on social media, so I just worry it'll get lost next week. And then we'll post the week after as well, like the week prior to, as a reminder. And then they'll go out in the next 2 weekly updates. And, if we want to make a calendar note to circle up after the first week and see how many applications we have, then maybe we would consider, an additional push that second week if we're not seeing the amount that you want to see from the president of the board.
It says Bloomfield Hills affiliation, community member. So as a community member, it would be a person who lives in a Bloomfield Hills school boundary, or is it my residency address is Bloomfield Hills? How is that determined for participation?
To me, community member, I think the idea is that generally these are going to be things that are, impacting schools, impacting the students. It would be somebody with this school boundaries, I would say. But
Yeah, I would say
somebody applies.
a person in the voting, like the voting precincts.
I just was thinking that if we could make that explicit somewhere, because
It could be a question, what voting, I might be doing, I think we have ours covered, whatever precinct you're in,
I think depending on who applies, but yeah, we could write a statement there that says like you must be a Bloomfield Hill, you must live within the Bloomfield Hill schools boundaries.
You should change it to BHS community. So Bloomfield Hills Schools community, like that is clear.
I might not get that.
Okay.
I don't know, I understand that, that point. I think it's something that could be determined after the fact too. If someone's like, oh, you know, I'm from Grand Rapids, you know, like sorry, we don't need you, you know. So,
I'm an affiliate.
I do think, you know, as you get started, and I know we're having this conversation in November with the foundation, maybe some of the community members' ideas cost a little bit of money, and Mary Ellen's looking for ways, you know, to like partner, and maybe some of those ideas come out of the committee. So I think it's a great idea.
Yeah. So I mentioned this before, but I would just offer, this is a little bit more down the road when you guys get rolling. We did something like this in a former district, and so rather than having to start from scratch, we might have like a template you could use in regards to how to set up meetings and stuff like that. It's certainly nothing you have to use, but it may be just useful if you're, you know, because we're starting this from scratch. So.
I'm not too proud to take.
Yeah.
We'll take whatever you
Yeah. And basically the same. We called it something different, but it was basically the same goals that you've identified,
right,
or the committee's identified that they want to do. So I'd be happy to pitch in if there's any value.
Yeah, that would be very helpful. Yeah.
So this came from a very short conversation on Trustee Bella and I am just so super excited to see your vision come to life here. And there is room for another board member if people want to join Tart and Paul. So just putting it out there as an option. Not that you have to, but just saying. All right. There is an open spot on that bench. Anything else for today?
Actually, I do have one more thing.
One more thing.
Bowers School Farm is having their fall festival this weekend.
Thank you for saying that.
And I'm going on Sunday, so I hope to see our community members and some of your smiling faces. I know I've persuaded a few more people in my community to come.
Awesome.
So I'm hoping others show up.
I wrote that down, as well as the fun runs that are this month. So check out your PTO pages. Thank you so much for that.
No problem.
So don't forget to participate in your fun run this month and help our PTOs raise money for our district. So thank you for reminding us for that. All right, so I move to adjourn.
Second.
Have a great day. Thank you.